When people think about retirement planning, one of the most common investment products that comes up in conversations with financial advisors is the annuity. Advisors often describe annuities as a safe, guaranteed way to protect income in retirement. On the surface, that sounds attractive, especially if you're worried about stock market swings, outliving your savings, or not having a pension. But underneath the sales pitch, annuities come with layers of complexity, hidden fees, and incentives that often serve the advisor and insurance company more than the investor. To understand whether an annuity truly belongs in your retirement plan, it's important to break down what they are, why they're so heavily promoted, how they compare to real wealth-building strategies, and the long-term consequences of choosing one over another. What are annuities? At their core, annuities are contracts with an insurance company. There are three main types of annuities. Fixed annuities. These guarantee a fixed return or payout, much like a certificate of deposit. They're simple, but often have low returns. Variable annuities. Your money is invested in mutual fund-like sub-accounts. Returns fluctuate with the market, but they often come with high fees and limits on growth. Indexed annuities. These are tied to a stock market index, like the S&P 500. They offer some upside but cap your gains and usually still include fees and restrictions. So, the central appeal here is income certainty. Many annuities promise that no matter what happens to the markets, you'll get a steady stream of income in retirement, sometimes even for life. Why do financial advisors recommend them? If annuities sound like they're too good to be true, well, that's because in many cases they actually are. Let's talk about the commission structure. Many financial advisors earn very large commissions from selling annuities. In fact, a single sale can generate 5 to 10% of the total investment for the advisor, compared to index funds or ETFs, which pay almost nothing in commissions. If you invest $100,000 into an annuity, the advisor could pocket $5,000 to $10,000 upfront. This creates a pretty strong incentive to recommend annuities, sometimes regardless of whether they're really the best option for the client. So, advisors often use fear to sell annuities. They highlight market crashes, volatility, or the risk of outliving your money. This kind of emotional appeal, well, it just makes annuities really attractive to cautious investors. Index funds are, honestly, simple and transparent. Annuities, on the other hand, come with dozens or even hundreds of pages of contract language. The average investor struggles to understand them, which gives the advisor leverage. When the product is just too complicated to evaluate, people end up relying on trust, and the advisor profits. The hidden fees no one talks about. Annuities are notorious for being packed with fees that eat away at returns. Surrender charges. If you try to take your money out early, surrender fees can be massive, often 7% or more in the first year, slowly declining over 7 to 10 years. Mortality and expense risk, or M&E fees. These are insurance fees charged annually, usually between 1% and 1.5% of your account value. This is far higher than what you'd pay in an index fund, which is typically 0.03% to 0.10%. So let's talk about administrative fees. These are usually annual flat charges like $30 to $50, and sometimes there are percentage-based costs too. Over time, all of these fees really start to add up. Now, about investment management fees. If your annuity has sub-accounts, which work kind of like mutual funds, you'll be charged another 0.5 to 1.5% every year. And then there are rider fees. Advisors often pitch things like guaranteed income riders or death benefit riders to give you some peace of mind. But, these extras can cost 1% or even more per year on top of everything else. When you combine all these fees, it's not unusual for annuities to carry total costs of 2 to 4% per year. Compare that to a low-cost index fund which may cost as little as 0.05%. Over 20 to 30 years, the difference can mean, well, hundreds of thousands of dollars lost to fees. Who really benefits from annuities? The uncomfortable truth is that in most cases, annuities benefit the advisor and the insurance company, not the investor. So, advisors, they tend to earn pretty large commissions right at the start, and insurance companies, Well, they collect ongoing fees and protect their downside by carefully limiting what you earn through things like caps and restrictions. Meanwhile, the investor is, unfortunately, left with limited liquidity, reduced returns, and honestly, a bit of a false sense of safety. But hey, there are definitely scenarios where annuities make sense. For example, a retiree with no pension who really values predictable income above all else. Or someone who has already maxed out other retirement accounts like 401ks and IRAs. Or maybe someone who is extremely risk-averse and doesn't care much about market growth. But for the majority of investors, annuities are not the most efficient or effective way to build wealth. Real wealth building versus high-cost products. To understand the difference, it's important to compare annuities with true wealth-building investments. Real wealth-building investments are assets that grow your money with minimal cost and, often generate income. These include low-cost index funds and ETFs, diversified stock and bond portfolios, rental properties and real estate investments, and businesses that generate cash flow. These investments rely on the power of compounding and low fees, which honestly maximize your long-term growth. On the other hand, high-cost products like annuities take away that growth through heavy fees, complex structures, and, limited liquidity. They are sold as solutions but often function more like financial traps. So here's a simple example for you. Imagine two investors, and each of them puts $100,000 to work for 30 years. One decides to invest in an annuity with a 3% net annual return, while the other chooses a low-cost index fund averaging 7%. The annuity investor, after those 30 years, ends up with about $240,000. Meanwhile, the index fund investor ends up with nearly $800,000. The difference is staggering. Both started the same, but the cost structure destroyed one investor's growth. That's why it's so important to distinguish between real wealth-building strategies and high-cost products sold for commissions. Here are a few more important points investors should know. Annuities grow tax-deferred, which sounds good. But when you withdraw money, it is taxed as ordinary income, not the lower capital gains rate you'd get from index funds. That means you could pay more in taxes in retirement. Liquidity issues can really catch you off guard. Once you put money into an annuity, getting it out can be very costly. Unlike index funds, which you can sell any day, annuities lock you in for years. Fixed annuities provide predictable income, but, inflation erodes their value over time. Unless the annuity has inflation protection, which is often sold at an extra cost, your purchasing power declines every year. Your guarantees are only as strong as the insurance company selling the annuity. If that company runs into financial trouble, your contract is at risk. So state insurance guarantee associations do provide some limited protection, but honestly, it's just not the same as FDIC insurance you get with banks. Here's the bottom line. Annuities are often marketed as the safe, guaranteed answer for retirement. But in most cases, they're expensive, inflexible, and honestly, they're designed to benefit advisors more than investors. The truth is that real wealth is built through low-cost, diversified income-producing assets, not by locking up your money in products that charge 2 to 4% a year while capping your upside. This doesn't mean annuities are always wrong. For some people with very specific needs, they can play a role. But for most investors, the better path is to focus on building assets that work for you, not products that quietly siphon your returns for decades. In other words, know the difference between true wealth-building investments and high-cost products sold for commission. That knowledge could be the difference between financial freedom and financial disappointment. If you found this breakdown helpful, hit that subscribe button. On this channel, we cut through the noise and show you how to actually build wealth without falling for overpriced products. Don't let commissions dictate your financial future. Subscribe now and take control of